The coffee shop window framed them like a painting, young lovers sharing gentle kisses between sips of cappuccino, oblivious to the world around them. David Matthews watched his boss, Eleanor Winters, staring at the couple with such longing in her eyes that it made his chest ache. He'd worked under her for 3 years, admiring her sharp business acumen and unwavering professionalism, never once suspecting the profound loneliness hiding behind her carefully constructed walls. Without thinking, David leaned closer and whispered, "You could have that too, you know." The words hung between them, changing everything. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt content that explores the unexpected connections that change our lives. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch the heart. Eleanor Winters had built her life around her career, sacrificing personal relationships for professional success. At 42, she was the youngest CEO in her company's history, respected and feared in equal measure by her employees. What they didn't see was how she returned each night to an immaculate but empty penthouse apartment, where the silence pressed against her like a physical weight. David Matthews was her opposite in many ways. At 38, he was a senior project manager who had joined the company after his wife's death left him a single father to 7-year-old Lily. His professional ambitions had taken a back seat to raising his daughter, something Eleanor secretly admired but couldn't fully understand. While his colleagues saw a competent, if somewhat distracted employee, Eleanor recognized something in him that resonated with her own carefully hidden vulnerabilities. Their paths crossed primarily in weekly management meetings and occasional project reviews. Eleanor maintained a professional distance, as she did with all her employees, but found herself noticing small details about David, how he always kept a crayon drawing from his daughter pinned to his cubicle wall, how he never stayed for after-work drinks because he needed to relieve the babysitter, how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The company's annual conference in San Francisco marked a turning point. Eleanor and David were both attending, along with several other managers. After a day of presentations and networking, Eleanor found herself alone in the hotel restaurant, nursing a glass of wine and watching couples at nearby tables. She didn't notice David approaching until he was standing beside her table. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice pulling her from her thoughts. Eleanor gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Please." They talked about the conference sessions, upcoming projects, and office politics, safe topics that maintained the professional boundary between them. But as the evening wore on and the restaurant emptied, their conversation shifted to more personal territory. "Lily's staying with my sister this week," David explained when Eleanor asked about his daughter. "She loves visiting her cousins, but I miss her like crazy. The apartment feels too quiet without her tornado energy." Eleanor smiled. "She sounds wonderful." "She is," David agreed, his face softening. "Exhausting sometimes, but wonderful. What about you? Any family waiting at home?" Eleanor swirled the remaining wine in her glass. "Just me. I never quite found the time for all that." "The time?" David raised an eyebrow. "For relationships, marriage, children." Eleanor shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. "My career always came first." "And now?" The question caught her off guard. "Now what? Does your career still come first?" Eleanor looked away, uncomfortable with his directness. "It's what I know." The next morning, they found themselves with a few hours to spare before their flights home. David suggested a walk along the waterfront, and to her own surprise, Eleanor agreed. They strolled past shops and cafes, maintaining a careful distance between them as they walked. When they passed a coffee shop with large windows facing the street, Eleanor's steps slowed. Inside, a young couple sat close together, sharing occasional kisses between conversation. Eleanor watched them, her expression unreadable. David observed her watching the couple, noting the subtle shift in her posture, the slight parting of her lips. Without thinking, he leaned closer and whispered, "You could have that too, you know." Eleanor turned to him, startled. "What?" "Connection. Companionship. David gestured toward the couple. It's not too late. That's easy for you to say, Eleanor replied, her voice tight. You've had it before. And lost it, David reminded her gently. Which makes me appreciate its value even more. Eleanor resumed walking, her pace quicker now. We should head back. Our flights. Eleanor. David's use of her first name stopped her. At work, he always called her Ms. Winters. I'm sorry if I overstepped. She shook her head. You didn't. It's just complicated. Life usually is. When they returned to work the following week, Eleanor maintained her professional demeanor, but something had shifted between them. She found herself noticing David more, how he brought homemade lunches in containers with cartoon characters, how he excused himself from meetings precisely at 5 p.m. to pick up Lily from after-school care, how his desk held more photos of his daughter than work-related documents. One evening, working late, Eleanor passed by David's cubicle and found him on the phone, his voice soft and patient as he talked his daughter through a homework problem. He didn't see Eleanor, and she didn't interrupt, but she lingered longer than necessary, listening to the tenderness in his voice. The company's annual charity gala arrived, a formal affair that employees were strongly encouraged to attend. Eleanor always made an appearance, mingling efficiently before departing early. This year, however, she found herself scanning the crowd for David. She spotted him near the bar, looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. He was speaking with another manager, but his eyes met hers across the room. After a moment's hesitation, Eleanor made her way toward him. Ms. Winters, he greeted her formally, aware of their colleagues nearby. Mr. Matthews. She nodded. Enjoying the evening? Trying to, he admitted. These events aren't really my element. Mine either, Eleanor confessed, surprising him. But appearances must be maintained. They fell into conversation, gradually moving away from the crowded center of the ballroom to a quieter corner. Eleanor found herself relaxing in his company, laughing more freely than she had in years. How's Lily? She asked during a lull in their conversation. David's face brightened. She's good. She's with a sitter tonight, my regular babysitter's daughter. Lily adores her because she lets her stay up 30 minutes past bedtime. They think I don't know. Eleanor smiled. Your secret's safe with me. Actually, David hesitated, then continued, Lily's been asking about you. About me? Eleanor was genuinely surprised. Why? I mentioned I work for you. She saw your picture in the company newsletter and decided you look like a princess from her favorite movie. David looked embarrassed. Her words, not mine. Eleanor laughed, a warm sound that drew glances from nearby colleagues who rarely saw this side of their boss. That's flattering, I suppose. She wants to meet you, David added, watching Eleanor's reaction carefully. No pressure, of course. I know there are boundaries. I'd like that, Eleanor interrupted, surprising herself as much as him. If it's appropriate. The following weekend, Eleanor found herself sitting in a small ice cream parlor, watching as David helped Lily decide between chocolate chip and strawberry. The child was a miniature version of her father, with the same warm brown eyes and expressive eyebrows, though her hair was a shade lighter. Ms. Winters likes vanilla, David told his daughter, glancing at Eleanor with a smile. How do you know? Eleanor asked, curious. Company picnic last summer. You had vanilla in a cup, no toppings. Eleanor was touched that he'd noticed such a small detail. You're observant. About some things, he agreed. Lily eventually settled on a scoop of each flavor, creating a melting masterpiece that required multiple napkins and constant supervision. Eleanor watched the easy interaction between father and daughter, the way David anticipated Lily's needs without making her feel babied, the way Lily looked to him with complete trust. Do you have kids? Lily asked Eleanor suddenly, ice cream smeared across her chin. Lily, David began, but Eleanor shook her head. It's fine, she assured him before turning to Lily. No, I don't have children. Why not? Lily persisted with a child's directness. Eleanor considered her answer carefully. I guess I was busy with other things, and then I never found the right person to have a family with. Lily nodded sagely. Daddy says finding the right person is important. He had my mommy, but she's in heaven now. I know, Eleanor said gently. Your dad told me she was very special. She was, Lily agreed. But Daddy gets lonely sometimes. I can tell because he sighs a lot when he thinks I'm not looking. David looked mortified. Lily, that's enough ice cream interrogation for today. But Eleanor found herself charmed by the child's honesty. It's okay to be lonely sometimes, she told Lily. Even grown-ups feel that way. Are you lonely? Lily asked, her eyes wide and curious. Eleanor met David's gaze over his daughter's head. Sometimes, she admitted. Yes. After that day, something changed. Eleanor found herself accepting David's casual invitations, a Saturday afternoon at the park with Lily, a school science fair where his daughter was presenting a project on butterflies, even a chaotic dinner at his modest apartment where Lily insisted on helping cook spaghetti, resulting in sauce splatters on nearly every surface. At work, they maintained their professional relationship, but colleagues began to notice subtle differences, how Eleanor would occasionally stop by David's desk rather than summoning him to her office, how she seemed more relaxed in meetings where he was present, how she had started leaving the office at reasonable hours instead of burning the midnight oil. For months after their conversation in San Francisco, David invited Eleanor to Lily's birthday party. It was a small gathering at his apartment, with a few of Lily's school friends, David's sister and her family, and now, unexpectedly, Lily's princess boss lady. Eleanor arrived feeling uncharacteristically nervous, carrying a carefully wrapped gift, a telescope she'd researched after hearing Lily express interest in stars during one of their park outings. The apartment was decorated with streamers and balloons, the chaos of children's laughter filling the space. David greeted her at the door, looking both harried and happy. You came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I said I would, Eleanor replied, handing him the gift. Is it too much? I wasn't sure. It's perfect, he assured her, then lowered his voice. Fair warning, my sister is here, and she's very curious about you. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. What have you told her? That you're my boss and a friend, David said simply. The rest is up to you. The party was unlike any social event Eleanor had attended in years. There were no networking opportunities, no business discussions, no strategic alliances to forge, just children playing games, adults chatting, and Lily at the center of it all, beaming with the importance of turning 8. David's sister, Sarah, cornered Eleanor by the refreshment table. So you're the famous Eleanor, she said, studying her with undisguised curiosity. Lily talks about you constantly. Does she? Eleanor was surprised. We've only met a few times. Sarah smiled knowingly. Children have good instincts about people. And so do I. Meaning? Meaning my brother looks happier than he has in years, Sarah said bluntly. And I don't think it's due to a promotion. Before Eleanor could respond, Lily called for everyone's attention. It was time for cake and presents. Eleanor watched as David helped his daughter blow out candles, his face illuminated by both the flickering flames and obvious love for his child. Something tightened in Eleanor's chest, not envy, exactly, but a sharp awareness of what she'd chosen to live without. When Lily opened Eleanor's gift, her squeal of delight drew everyone's attention. A real telescope. Daddy, look! Now we can see all the stars. That's very generous, David said quietly to Eleanor as Lily showed off her gift to her friends. Thank you. It's nothing, Eleanor demurred. She mentioned wanting to see Saturn's rings. It's not nothing, David insisted. You listen to her. That means everything. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Eleanor found herself helping with cleanup, something her housekeeper usually handled in her own home. She and David worked in companionable silence, gathering paper plates and plastic cups while Lily played with her new gifts in her bedroom. You didn't have to stay, David said as they finished. I wanted to, Eleanor replied simply. They stood in his small kitchen, closer than they would ever stand at work. Eleanor was acutely aware of the domestic intimacy of the moment, the birthday cake remnants, the dishwasher humming, the sound of Lily talking to herself in the next room. Eleanor, David began, then stopped, seeming unsure. Yes? This, whatever this is between us, it's complicated. Eleanor nodded. I'm your boss. That's part of it, David acknowledged. But there's more. I have Lily to consider. And you have your career. And we're both carrying our own histories. Are you trying to end something that hasn't even started? Eleanor asked, her voice steady despite the sudden tightness in her throat. David shook his head. I'm trying to understand what we're doing. What you want. I don't know, Eleanor admitted. This isn't familiar territory for me. For what it's worth, David said quietly, I don't know either. But I'd like to find out. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. The man before her wasn't the polished executives she usually associated with, the power players in her professional world. He was real in a way they weren't, a father with spaghetti sauce stains on his kitchen cabinets and a heart that had been broken but had healed enough to risk again. I'd like that too, she whispered. Their first official date was dinner at a restaurant halfway between their homes, neutral territory. Eleanor arrived first, having changed from her work clothes into a simple dress that felt both too casual and too formal for whatever this evening was supposed to be. David arrived 5 minutes late, slightly out of breath. Sorry, he apologized. Lily's babysitter was late, and then traffic. It's fine, Eleanor assured him. How is Lily? Excited that I'm having dinner with Princess Boss Lady, David smiled. She made me promise to tell you hello. The conversation flowed more easily than Eleanor had expected. Outside the office, without the hierarchical relationship between them, they discovered